It's Turkey Day 2023, and guess what? Ridley Scott serves us up a turkey of a movie, Napoleon, 2 hours and 30 minutes. Oh, goodness gracious. Let's talk about why I hate this movie coming up next. Napoleon, big blockbuster epic starring Joaquin Phoenix, one of my favorite actors. He always picks great projects, or he's got a whole string of those. Here he's in Ridley Scott's Napoleon, a version that's very francophobic. I shouldn't even say that. It really just hates Napoleon. It's as much as you might hate Napoleon, I think Ridley Scott hates him worse. And that could be okay. I don't mind any artistic interpretation, but this movie is pretty inartful, pretty inconsistent, and kind of a mess. Napoleon's really two things at once. It's a greatest hits versions of Napoleon Bonaparte's life, the great man general who people revered and hated back in the 19th century, and for good reason, for bad, but whatever you think about him, he had a huge, enormous life, and it really is hard to put that in 2.5 hours. So we get just a few things from the movie. I walked out of the movie, a couple history buffs were talking to me about it, like, they missed this, and this. Of course they did, because you can't fit it into a 2.5 hour movie. It's got to be 6-9 hours long, so you gotta pick your lane. The movie within the movie here, the core of the movie to me is Josephine, Napoleon's wife, and then he divorces her. You could title this movie Napoleon Josephine, and you could have had a movie that would just focus on the two of them and their relationship and gotten rid of all the battlefield stuff. No, Ridley Scott probably doesn't want to do that, but there's probably an hour of battle in this movie and like an hour and a half of intimate personal stuff, and it's really hard to see it all work together, including the fact that Napoleon's character, and I love Phoenix to death, I think he's fantastic, but it's just a wildly inconsistent character. He goes from aloof and alpha in the beginning, he meets Josephine, he turns into a juvenile brat who is sometimes violent, sometimes weird, whiny, petty, kind of an incel at times. It's hard to imagine how this guy rose to power, and the movie really gives no sociological, biological, psychological reasons for why people accepted him, how he could have pulled it off, why many hundreds of thousands of men loved him and followed him. It doesn't really have a rationale for any of that. What it does have is trying to present him as a tyrant king who is terribly rude to this Josephine, his wife, who he of course ditches because she can't produce an heir. What Scott's vision here is he wants to say how terrible Napoleon was. The end credits say he killed 3 million men. The beginning of this is, French Revolution, violent, bloody, and mercenary, and ambition. And so you see a depiction of ambition, but I don't see a character who is ambitious. I see a whiny, childish brat wanting to do it doggy style with his wife and making dog sounds to do it, saying ridiculous, memeable things like, how can you not care for me and my feelings? He makes exclamations like that made me audibly laugh. This movie does not want you to laugh at it, but I must have laughed at it 5 or 6 times and said, what the heck is going on here? This is so weird. There's even one moment where I think he's chiding a British consul. He's yelling at him like a baby, and he says, you think you're so great because you have boats. A bunch of people at my theater laughed at this. I don't think you're supposed to laugh, but that's sometimes how ridiculous this movie can be. And then when Napoleon shows up as a leader of men, when he turns from Elba, famously the isle he was exiled to, and all these men put down their arms and embrace him as the former emperor, now as the new emperor again. Like, how would they even love this guy? Who would follow this guy? He's not a tough guy. He's not anything like a military general or any kind of warrior hero would be. So therefore the movie, and I don't like this part of the movie either, but the Napoleon Josephine stuff, you have a lot of voiceover narration where the letters between them are read aloud by both of their voices. Now she seems like she's in love with him, but of course in the movie you see her sleep around, Napoleon gets super jealous. And they have this struggle over a romantic relationship. And I think the movie wants to, like in Scott's previous historical movies, make a big case out of this woman who's trapped in this big masculine world. I guess they're toxically masculine, they're incel. I don't know what Napoleon actually is. Yet it would seem inconsistent with the letters, which are sort of sentimental and tender. So the way that Scott gets out of this is to show that whenever there's writing and whenever she signs something, she's forced to say something stupid and propagandish that she doesn't believe, which I think is an indication that her love letters were written in that way too, and that's the way this movie interprets the historical Josephine's letters, not as real love or any real sentiment, but as, you know, some kind of fake thing that she had to say because I guess men in power wanted her to. Now, whether you like that or not, this is a real mess of a movie that I think I want to turn on its head. I want Scott or somebody else to make a Duke of Wellington movie, because if you're going to be all this Francophobic and hate Napoleon this much, just do the opposite. Don't be so depressing. Don't be so dark, and focus on a figure. I mean, I know it's anti-tyrannical. I kind of like that. It's anti, like, terrible warlord type guy, so let's get rid of those kinds of guys. I get that. But let's have a uplifting Duke of Wellington movie. Maybe somebody like Nolan can make that, but I don't know. They would probably never get that in these dark, depressing times where we have to, you know, lord it on Napoleon, who, you know, you read the 19th century people, Ralph Waldo Emerson, a bunch of interpreters, they actually are ambivalent about Napoleon, a super, really, world historical, famous man who did so many amazing things, amazing and terrible and awful and great, changing the whole legal system of Europe. I mean, all kinds of things that he did that no one else is doing. So I just don't believe this historical interpretation in this movie makes any sense. Historically, it's going to drive some people nuts that way, but psychologically, sociologically, it didn't make sense to me either. For all those reasons, I'm only going to give this 1 star. I did not enjoy watching this movie. I thought I might walk out 75 minutes in because it was laughably bad at times. I'm sorry to say, you know, Ridley Scott strikes out again. He's done this many times. I like some of his movies a lot, but some of these historical movies are not very good in my opinion. So this material has a ton of potential. I think someone else could come along and do it. It is made for cinema to do something huge with Napoleon. There's no doubt about it. Or the Duke of Wellington or something else. War and Peace, right? Something like that. But this isn't the one. You want to save yourself some time, skip it, and go watch something else that's in this vein, like the old Russian War and Peace, which is an absolute classic. What did you think about Napoleon? Let us know in the comments. Please subscribe to this channel for more great content and reviews. Thanks, and have a great day.